I left the office and went down to the dining room, and I noticed that the door was propped open and the valet was inside the dining room changing the tablecloth off of the dining room table. He motioned for me to come in and then pointed towards the front of the room near the fireplace mantle and the TV, where I first noticed there was ketchup dripping down the wall and there's a shattered porcelain plate on the floor. The valet had articulated that the president was extremely angry at the Attorney General's AP interview and had thrown his lunch against the wall, which was causing them to have to clean up. So I grabbed a towel and started wiping the ketchup off of the wall to help the valet out. And he said something to the effect of, he's really ticked off about this. I would stay clear of him for right now. He's really, really ticked off about this right now.
There we have the Mick meltdown from the former president, Donald Trump, and relayed by Cassidy Hutchinson, who was testifying before the January 6th committee. This is the 6th time the committee has met for their hearings. If this was a surprise emergency hearing yesterday, I was like, it's gonna be this documentarian. You guys are gonna wait till you get a load of it. And no sooner could those words have left my mouth, but then we saw Cassidy Hutchinson, who is a former aide to White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. Again, Meadows, who's been refusing to testify in front of the January 6th committee. Basically, we have the next best thing, perhaps someone who will be even more honest. There she is explaining that after Donald Trump saw his Attorney General, Bill Barr, speak to the AP about how he did not see any fraud in the election. This is December 1st of 2020. He took his plate of what we can only imagine is, I don't know, a fish fillet, because that's what you wouldn't want to put ketchup on, but of course this guy does. And he threw it against the wall. And I don't know, the part that stuck out to me was, yes, explosive, ridiculous temper tantrum, but also Cassidy helped clean it up, helped the valet clean it up. Jayar, have you ever thrown a plate of food against a wall? Jayar, you're on mute, my friend.
Why do I do this? Why do I do things like this?
I do it all the time.
First of all, no, I've not thrown a plate of food against the wall, mostly because I know I'd probably have to clean it up, which is maybe part of his motivation for doing it, because someone else always has to clean up after this guy. When it comes to food or just the things that he says, no, this has always been one of those things. If you're erratic and you don't have much control over your emotions, you do things like this. I've said the same thing for guys who punch walls and stuff like that, and they break their hand and go, oh my God, I can't believe when I punch this brick wall that my knuckles would actually break. Yeah, bro, maybe think before you do something like this. But this goes into how unhinged and disconnected he was from anyone saying anything to him that's like, hey, what you just did and said is untrue, and he knows it. But he needs everyone to surround him and circle the wagons around him and his lie. No matter what those things are, and no matter how much those lies, get those people that are supposed to be loyal to him in trouble. So he needs to have these large displays of anger, violence, and I'm in control, I'm the boss still. And throwing plates against the wall is just one of those instances.
Absolutely, this is mafia moves, and it reminds me, there's a lot of domestic violence cases that involve, people throwing plates against walls. One time I threw pesto in my brother's face when I was like 11. And I've never been allowed to be forgiven for that or never forgotten. But obviously we're gonna go from lighthearted to more severe, because if only it stopped at throwing a plate of food against a wall. Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony continued. The second part we should look at is how much the innermost workings of the Trump administration, how much his staff knew very, very in and out that what was going to take place on January 6th could be a crime and would be considered a crime if it were to be carried out. And specifically, if Donald Trump himself and White House staff were with the Capitol rioters themselves. So let's take a look at this.
I saw Mr. Cipollone right before I walked out onto West Exec that morning, and Mr. Cipollone said something to the effect of, please make sure we don't go up to the Capitol, Cassidy. Keep in touch with me. we're going to get charged with every crime imaginable if we make that movement happen.
And do you remember which crimes Mr. Cipollone was concerned with?
In the days leading up to the 6th, we had conversations about potentially obstructing justice or defrauding the electoral count.
Oh, she got specific. Defrauding justice, disrupting the electoral count. Very specific crimes there. That Pat Cipollone was Trump's one of his defense attorneys or his legal advisors. So in addition to many others who were warning him not to do all of these things. And again, we've heard the plan A, the plan B, and this seems to be like the plan C, which is a coup, storm the Capitol, make it violent. Plan A and B, meaning find some evidence of fraud, I don't care where, and cast doubt on the election, and then send some alternate electors. So we have all these nonviolent solutions. Now we get to the day of, and Cipollone knows that it's a crime. Cipollone knows, and so Jayar, we've been talking this whole time about why didn't he go up to the Capitol? Oh, so he said he was right behind you, but he wasn't. And here you see that everyone around Trump was like, we can't go. The last thing we can do is go.
Again, because they're looking to protect him from himself. He makes these decisions, he sees this opportunity, I think. Because again, as you mentioned, plan C is we tried all the other illegal activity that's supposed to be kind of looking like it's normal activity with fake electors and disrupting this and asking local officials to then overturn their election results. And hey, let's question those voting machines. All this process that didn't work up to that point because there was just a few people here and there that wouldn't cooperate. The last step was pure chaos. And this was just part of chaos. And when officials and when advisors and attorneys like this hear, hey, so we're gonna cause chaos and then hope that there's some kind of martial law that's declared. And then Donald Trump can say, I'm still president. We never actually certified that. It was going down to the very last second of whatever we can do to avoid. That's the question. What is it that he was trying to avoid? But then in avoiding it, what you have is more charges like this, actually trying to corrupt an entire election and having a full plan in multiple steps to do something like this. It says so much is going on. And again, so we talked about the food order and we talked about how Cipollone was talking about the reasons behind this. They tied so many knots together in just yesterday's testimony, it's astounding. There's not one moment from that testimony yesterday where you can say, yeah, that's a throwaway moment. Everything was connected.
Yes, so many explosive moments. Here's another one which proves that not only did Trump and his innermost circle know it was a crime, but they knew that the people who were at the rally, the Stop the Steal rally, the peaceful rally that organizers had no idea was going to manifest into a full-blown attack on the Capitol. Oh my God, we didn't say that. We said march to the Capitol. What you do there, you can lead a horse to the water, but you can't force him to drink type thing, but he's probably gonna drink the water. So did they know that mob was armed? Did they know that mob was angry? Here is what Cassidy Hutchinson says about all that.
But when we were in the offstage announce tent, I was part of a conversation. I was in the vicinity of a conversation where I overheard the president say something to the effect of, I don't effing care that they have weapons. They're not here to hurt me. Take the effing mags away. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol from here. Let the people in. Take the effing mags away.
Take the effing mags away. And mags is a reference to these roadblocks, to the security that was put in place for that march, where officials were stopping protesters because they were armed, because they had weapons. Not clear exactly what weapons those were. I am looking definitely for more detail on, how many had guns, how many were armed with more than just, flex cuffs, etc. Pepper spray, tear gas, all the things that we know they had. But Trump, because he's obsessed with his own image, didn't want it to look like the January 6th rally was empty. Oh, don't worry, bro. We saw it later. There were a lot of you. Hats off, Jayar. There were a lot of insurrectionists.
Just not enough, apparently, because again, he wanted to pack the house. And again, allowing people with firearms by the mags, which would have identified and Secret Service would have had to confiscate their weapons. number one, the folks with the weapons didn't want to have to give up their weapons. And number two, Donald Trump didn't want them to have to give up their weapons because they needed those weapons for the attack. Number one, and number two, they needed to fill the House. Actually, I'm sorry, let me flip those. Number one, it was to fill the ellipse so that his speech could look better because that's his number one objective. And number two, it's bring the weapons because after this, we're gonna march down to the Capitol with our firearms and then just kind of just brandish them, I guess. Not really use them. We're just gonna hang out and act like we're just doing this for fun. Now, you mentioned you were gonna check into it. I did on my show this morning, I did check into it. Multiple people were arrested and charged with having firearms. The Capitol Police also pointed that out. People had firearms, AR-15s, guns on their hips, hiding in trees. There were firearms that day.
No, insane, and yet they're not coming for me. They're not trying to get me. So why do you guys worry? Oh, hey, Secret Service, I know you're trying to protect the president. Don't worry, I'm safe. You guys, you're all gonna die, but I am safe. I mean, it's absolute. The ego, this guy will stand on a den of skulls if it means he's the one who gets to stand on top of it, right? Like he just a pile of it, like that straight up Game of Thrones style. And I don't know what that says. I don't know, Jayar, you tell me in terms of you're a supporter. What do you make of this? They're not coming for me. They're coming for all of these other never Trumpers who I just decided was a never Trumper this moment.
I always ask myself that question because it happened also in a previous January 6th hearing testimony when they talked about how much he robbed his supporters and defrauded them and said, look, we need your money. You got to send us some donations so we can fight this election fraud because we actually won this election and then the deep state and the election voting machines, they all ruled against me. And people fed him hundreds of millions of dollars. And he used that hundreds of millions of dollars to pay people for speeches at the ellipse, to pay himself, probably some more debts. Actually, no, he doesn't pay off debts, to pocket that money. And I always asked, I said, so when supporters hear this, how do you break this all down and say, okay, that makes sense because you have to have an excuse in your head. And then when it comes to hearing about how he said, as long as they're not, I mean, I know they're not gonna hurt me. Who would they hurt? And if you're in support of somebody who says, as long as they don't hurt me, how do you feel safe?
Yeah.
It's just not America. So actually what it is, and I discovered this, is they just aren't listening. There's folks who were mad yesterday because we were talking about this and said, look at these people upset at Donald Trump. I can't believe it. I couldn't care less what's said there. That's the problem. Yeah. Because you couldn't care less what's being revealed because if you hear it, you might have to rethink your position.
In my opinion, all these guys are middlemen, right? And it's helpful for the nation and the state of democracy to understand all of the checks and balances, as much as many of them failed, but that were in place to try and rein in the president. Like just on some like me asking what the hell was going down that day, how did folks get so close and so far, what was happening internally? It's good to have this record. Does it matter for the MAGA base? No. He has to directly call out the insurrectionists and say all these like disgusting, unkempt, like supporters of mine, I don't know them. They're not with me. He needs to say that, but he will never say that. And until he says that, they think that they're completely in lockstep. Even if some of them are serving time for what they did on January 6th, they're completely, all the other guys in the middle, including Mike Pence, which by the way, one quote we don't have, but Cassidy Hutchinson did testify that even when Donald Trump heard that the hang Mike Pence chants were happening, he was like, yeah, good, he should be.
Have at it. Hey, by the way, just really fast, I'm looking forward to Donald Trump also calling his supporters raggedy as well. Unkempt, filthy, fingernails dirty. You guys go home. That's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, no, and it'll never happen, right? Because it's just this like pipeline between the bowels of the country, the bowels of the internet, and the top doo-doo in charge.
For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.